In this video, we're going to create packages, and you start to really understand how the web hosting or the reseller web hosting business works. Now, if you look at this particular account, this particular web hosting account, you would notice that this account actually has about 300 gigabytes of disk space. And you see, this is 295 gig of space. So when you come under disk details here, you see 295 gig. So that's about 300 gig. Of course, the system itself is going to use some resources. The files on the web hosting account is going to use some resources and all of that. So basically, let's assume that out of the 300 gig, let's assume I'm giving 50 gig to my system, or let me say I'm giving 20 gig to my system. So from 300 gig, it means I have about 270 gig left if I'm taking out 30 gig for my system and for my own websites and things like that. So the next thing you now want to do as a web host is you want to decide what packages you are going to sell to your customers. So are you going to be selling 10 gig each? Are you going to be selling 20 gig each? Are you going to be selling 30 gig each? And this will now come after you have researched the market and after you have considered what the needs of your customers will be. We'll talk about this more when we get to the pricing and billing system. We'll go in depth into this. But once you have decided on that, the next thing you want to do is you want to create packages. It is these packages that your customers will subscribe to. So under the navigation here, I'm just going to search for packages, and then I'm going to click on packages. Now, under packages, what you now want to do in advance is that you want to create packages that your customers will subscribe to. For instance, let me add a new package and just show you. So here I'll give a package name. So for instance, you can say, okay, anytime I'm selling 10 gig of space, I want to give that package the name of starter, and then the disk space is going to be 10 megabytes. Usually the rule of thumb is that you multiply the bandwidth, you multiply whatever disk space you have by 10, and that should give you the bandwidth. So if you notice that your competitors are doing maybe a bandwidth of like 100 MB for 10 MB of disk space, you can decide to do maybe 250 if you like, and depending on how much bandwidth you also have. Then you have your FTP, you can say 2. So you want to check what others are doing in web hosting industry in your local environment, and then you want to match it. So for FTP, I can decide to say, okay, for this starter pack, the FTP is going to be 5. Then the email accounts that can be created on these accounts, I can say 5 or 10 or 100 depending on you. Then the email list that can be created, you decide. I can say 5. I can decide to give it any amount. The amount of my SQL, I can say 100, I can say 50, I can say 10. It's all left to you to decide what you want to do. So I'm just going to do this and say 5. Then, are you giving out subdomains on this account? If you're giving out subdomains on this account, you give the number of subdomains. Later, I'm going to explain to you what subdomains are, packed domains, and all of that. So for now, let me just do 2 subdomains for this account, and then no add-on domain. And then nproc, I'm just going to leave this as it is. I'm just going to leave this as 40. I'm going to leave this as 40. I'm going to leave this at 200. I'm going to leave this as base, and I'm going to leave all the others as default. So what I need to do now is just to do create. Oh, add-on domains, let's give 0. And then packed domains, let's give 0. So it's asking us to give a figure. So I'm just going to do create. And once you do create, it means you have now created an account, and then you can add more. So if you want to add more packages, you can say, okay, this is a gold package, and this is going to be 50 MB, and then the bandwidth is going to be times 10, which is 5,000, and then the FTP is going to be maybe 20, and then the email addresses that can be created is 25, and then the email list, you can say 0 if you want, the MySQL servers 10, the subdomains maybe 10 or 5 or 2 or 0 if you want, the path domain 0. Now it is very important that you set the hourly email limits. Now this is something that you should pay attention to. You should always set the hourly email limits. What you don't want on your server is you don't want one person bringing down your server. You also don't want your customers using your server for spam activities. So you should limit how many emails can go out per hour from your server. You can just limit the hourly email rates to maybe like 50, and that should do, depending on what settings you want, but I think 50 should be okay. A legitimate user on a shared hosting account should not be doing more than that amount of email per hour. So limit the number of email for each account. Add-on domain, I'm going to leave that as 0, and then you don't want to give reseller access to your customer, because the moment you give them reseller access, it means they can also resell. So you want to just give them a general account, and then you do create. And once you do create, you now have 2 packages added. Now, the next thing you just need to do in order to now successfully host your first website is just to register a domain and set up that domain. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to set up a domain and how to create private name servers, which you now give to your customers so that your customers can use those private name servers to connect to your web hosting account when you host them. So the next video, we'll talk about domains, we'll talk about all of that, and then we'll talk about how you can now start hosting customers, and then we host the first website and we do the first WordPress install on the website just for you to see how things work. I'll see you in the next video. All right.